Welcome, Deputy Mayor Stremler.
Can you hear me, Jackie?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Counselor Henry.
Thank you.
Jackie, I'm also here.
Hello, you always sneak in.
Jackie, this is Mike Farmer. I'm also here.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, welcome everyone. It is now 6:30, Monday, August 10th, and this is our regular Monday night council meeting. This is the 11th council meeting held via online conference application. All city council members and city staff are participating from remote, and the meeting will continue as long as there's a quorum. Please allow one person to speak at a time. I will call on every member to make sure that you have had an opportunity to speak, and votes will be taken by roll call vote. I will now ask the city clerk to start our roll call vote, please.
Mayor Guerrero,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Here.
Counselor Farmer,
Here.
Counselor Henry,
Here.
Counselor Restucci,
Here.
Counselor Hicks,
Here.
Counselor Broersma,
Here.
City Manager Casey,
Here.
City Clerk Renteria, I am here. Finance Director Alba,
Here.
Fire Chief Anderson, Fire
I'm
Chief.
here.
Okay, perfect. Thank
I'm
you.
okay.
Police Chief Escalera,
I'm here.
Public Works Director Fisher, Public Works Director Fisher.
Here.
Perfect. Thank you. We're all here.
Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum, so we'll continue. First item on our agenda is our public comment report. Mr. City Manager, have we received any public comments from our citizens?
We did not receive any written submissions in advance of tonight's meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next agenda item is our consent agenda, which consists of the approval of the minutes for the July 31st, 2020 regular meeting and the minutes of the July 27th, 2020 regular meeting. approval of payroll vouchers numbers 118788 through 118794, and wire transfers listed for $619,114.73 for the period ending on July 27th, 2020. Approved claim vouchers numbers 99576 through 99618, and wire transfers are listed for $302,916.67 for the period ended on July 29th, 2020. Voucher numbers 99619 through 99648, and wire transfers are listed for $125,807.87 for the period ending on August 5th, 2020. I will now call on each council member to ensure we have an opportunity to ask any questions, and we'll start with Deputy Mayor Stremler.
I have no questions.
Thank you. Councilor Hicks,
No questions.
Councilor Restucci,
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Henry,
No questions or comments.
Councilor Boersma.
I have no questions, sir.
Okay, and finally, Councilor Farmer.
No questions.
I do have one question, Mr. City Manager, on both of those items. They're both on page 7 for Pacific Power, and they're both transaction number 8180 for the one ending on 8/5/2020, and page 7 also for the other one, which is transaction 8001. One's for 27,283 and 24 cents. The one's for 14,655 and 16. They're both showing as bills for 6 July and August. And I was kind of curious why we're seeing twice. They're different amounts on both of them, but they both seem to have most of the different cost allocation departments and that area.
Apologize, Mr. Mayor, wasn't unmuted yet. I am seeing the check number 99638 you mentioned in the amount of 27,283. I'm going to ask if Finance Director Alba can explain, just is it a matter of we got 2 billing periods that happen to come across these 2 check runs, or that's why it is? I think the cost allocation is the standard internal service cost allocation that we're using, but I'll see if the Finance Director can explain further.
And actually, I don't have any information for that check run in front of me because I'm at home. I would have to actually go pull the bills themselves and look at them, but they look like standard payments, and maybe one was missed with having telework in our AP. I'm not sure though. I'd have to actually pull both of them and look at them.
Okay, so yeah, if you could just send council an email with what you find, I'll be okay with that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, it does appear in the detail memo section that there seems to be a slight difference in the dates, but we'll research that and confirm that for you in the service
thank you.
dates.
Okay, council, having had questions and comments answered, what is the desire of council on this item?
I would move to approve. This is John Henry.
Second, this is Jim Restucci.
Okay, motion by Councilor Henry, second by Councilor Restucci to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any debate on this item? No debate. Ms. City Clerk, will you please do a roll call vote on this item?
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Yes.
Councilor Hicks,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Councilor Restucci,
Yes.
Councilor Henry,
Yep.
Councilor Boersma,
Yes.
Councilor Farmer.
Yes.
Mayor, you have 7 yes votes.
Thank you. So this item is approved. Up next, we have our active agenda, which is going to be the first reading for a public camping ordinance and provide direction on the first reading. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council have recently held discussions on our parking codes and current case law governing how cities can regulate issues of homelessness. Some specific concerns were raised about several persons residing in vehicles at a city-owned parking lot. We also had discussions around an encampment located near exit 67 off of Interstate 82. Current city codes regarding parking or loitering don't completely address these situations. Private property owners have certain rights and options that public property owners do not. And cities may regulate public health and safety, and they can also regulate abandoned vehicles and parking. However, a city may not criminalize, quote, sleeping, sitting, or lying in all public spaces when no alternative sleeping space is available, unquote. The Ninth Circuit Court in Martin v. Boise had held that criminalizing these actions violates the Eighth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Following these discussions, Council asked the city's attorneys to draft an ordinance to create a new code section specific to camping on public property. Modeled in part on a similar ordinance recently adopted by the City of Union Gap, the draft ordinance here for first reading tonight would define and restrict public encampments, would provide enforcement mechanisms for the cleanup and removal of unauthorized encampments, and would set penalties for violations. Enforcement would be suspended when no meaningful alternatives are available. And I just would note for council's awareness, the city attorney unfortunately did have a prior commitment tonight with the city of Pasco, but if council has any questions or edits or amendments to propose, the city clerk and I will capture your comments and relay those to the city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Okay, now we'll go down the list and see if anyone has any comments, questions, or edits they want to do to this first reading. And we'll start with our Councilor Hicks.
No questions.
Councilor Farmer.
This is kind of, the ordinance is basically what I expected to see. My concern is, as we move forward with this, what is going to constitute a place for these people to go? Is it going to have to be a building? Is it going to have to be some nonprofit group bring them in? Can we move them to a different spot in the city? Just what are we going to do? Or what can we do?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, we can take that back to the attorneys for a more definitive answer based on our previous conversations. What the city can do is fairly limited under the law. The city does not have the authority to move them to a different location against their will, nor does the case law in Martin v. Boise require the city to provide a city-funded space, facility, or building, or campground. I do recall from last workshop discussion, Eric Ferguson, the city attorney, acknowledging that there are some risks and liabilities with the city taking on hosting of a campsite or encampment location on city property. It raises questions or considerations around city's liability and duty to care. That gives a partial answer, but I'm certainly happy to take that back to the city attorney for more definitive. You also mentioned there are potential actions that could be taken by private interest, nonprofit organizations, and so forth. And we are reaching out to learn more about that. And I will have a lot more information on that in the city manager's report regarding some of the contacts we've made recently with homeless services organizations in the Valley.
So if I understand you right, then you're saying that we cannot designate an area in town for this to happen and require the people to move. Is that what you're saying?
We can, as I understand it from the city attorney's briefing, we could designate legal locations where people could camp, but we cannot require them or relocate them to go there.
Okay.
And we'll get a definitive answer on that for the next discussion.
Additional questions, Councilor Farmer?
That's all for right now.
Okay, Councilor Henry,
And not at this time, no. Thank you.
Councilor Stremler. Deputy Mayor Stremler, any questions or comments?
Yeah, no, I just feel without any definitive answers at the end, it's kind of futile to proceed with it, just the way it appears, unless we have some answers. I realize that there needs to be a place for them to go, but I guess I was kind of hoping we'd have an answer versus have an ordinance that basically means nothing at this point. That's really all, just a comment. That's really all I have.
Okay, Councilor Boersma?
Well, I also, Mr. Mayor, I do have concerns about where these folks can go. I've mentioned that before. I'm concerned about the well-being of the, for lack of a better term, I guess, our campers or homeless. I also want to make sure that we're concerned about the safety of the community as well. But yeah, I think this is a good start. It's a move in the right direction. So I guess to that extent, I'm in favor of it, but I would like to see some solutions, some places for people to go, something along those lines added to at some point along the line.
Okay, Councilor Restucci?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I have to agree with my colleagues when it comes to what I expected to see. I appreciate the fact that we adopted an ordinance from a local city as well. It helps strengthen the law if this does come to a court case, so I appreciate that as well. But I do have concerns about the individuals, where they're going to be moved, how they're going to be moved. I think council's question needs to be answered before we can move this document forward.
Okay, and today's the first reading, so we won't be making a decision on this today. Hopefully we'll get answers on some of these questions. And just to add to that, I'm concerned of us setting funds aside for a location and potential liability of housing some individuals. There's quite a few options in other cities, in bigger cities, that can afford some of this housing and faith-based organizations who can assist in this arena. And if these individuals choose to get help, that's a whole different story. I did get a call today from one of the council members from Grandview who is on the homeless coalition in Yakima, and I did direct them to talk to Mr. City Manager as far as options that they have to hopefully try to aid these individuals in getting some assistance, whether it's housing or helping repair their vehicle. That's an option to help them get off their kind of rough spot that they're on right now. But I wouldn't be in favor of us funding a housing unit or a location where potentially could be a lot more liability, according to our city attorney. So at this point, I like the first reading. It makes sense. One question I do have for the city manager is, do you know what changes our city attorney worked on? Because I know he mentioned he wanted to make some minor modifications, and I read through it, but nothing stood out that was completely different from the original document he presented.
That's correct. He had wanted to research a little further, and I'll ask Jackie if you could please scroll a little further so that we see the full definitions section. And I think that may be at the very top. There, yes, a little further up. He spoke to me on the phone and said he'd wanted to just confirm and review the language regarding camp facilities and camp paraphernalia. Those were terms that were carried forward from the Union Gap ordinance. He had pointed out during his briefing to council that depending on the conditions, so if we're talking extreme winter conditions, sub-freezing temperatures and so forth, denying a person access to a cot or sleeping bag, might stretch that Ninth Circuit decision around that ability to sort of fundamentally exercise a human function of sleeping. He just wanted to make sure that it allowed for some flexibility, and that he came back and said he was satisfied that the language was workable, but that's what he'd wanted to look at.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager.
And for council's awareness, as I said, I did have planned an update on some of the other activities and resources that we've been reaching out to. And I'll have more information on some of the other sites or locations or possibilities. I could either do that now or during the city manager's report, whichever council prefers.
Let's do it during the city manager report.
Okay.
And so at this point, it sounds like the majority council wants to see this move forward. Obviously, it's not a perfect document, and it is a good starting point. So unless we have a majority objection, we'll just take this on to the second reading so we can continue working on it. Okay, hearing no objections, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is going to be our Planning Commission meeting time. Consider approving an ordinance amending SMC 2.50, changing the time of the Sunnyside Planning Commission meeting from 6:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking on behalf of Planning Supervisor Mike Shuttleworth, this actually comes at the request of the Planning Commission, which had begun meeting again this year with Mr. Shuttleworth, and brought forward a suggestion just for their convenience and ease of operations to start their meeting times each month just 1 hour earlier at 5:30 instead of 6:30. And so we're bringing this forward and recommending it on behalf of the Planning Commission. There's no other change to their ordinance or operations.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and go down the list and ask any councilors who have questions or comments on this item. We'll start with Councilmember Restucci.
No questions or comments, Mr. Mayor. Well, one comment, and that is that I support this. The Planning Commission needs to be able to meet when it's best for all of their members, and council should kind of let them kind of run that.
Thank you. Councilor Boersma.
Yeah, I also support this. I agree with my colleague that when the members of the commission need to meet, what's most convenient for them, I think we'd ought to support them in that.
Okay, Councilor Henry.
No questions.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
No comments.
Councilor Farmer.
I would support it. No, that would be the comment I have.
Councilor Hicks.
I support it.
Okay, so I don't have any problems with the change myself. So if that's the time that works for them, that's perfect. Obviously, it sounds like we got a majority support. So what is the desire of the council on this item?
Move to approve.
Okay, I heard two different individuals. I couldn't quite make out who it was.
Councilor Hicks, approve.
Okay,
So Councilor Hicks moves to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, so a motion by Councilor Hicks, second by Councilor Restucci to approve an ordinance amending SMC 2.50, changing the time of the Sunnyside Planning Commission meeting from 6:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Is there any debate on this item? Okay, hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote.
Councillor Restucci,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Councillor Boersma,
Yes.
Councillor Henry,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Yes.
Councillor Farmer,
Yes.
Councillor Hicks.
Yes.
Okay, there's 7 yes votes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Up next, we have items from council members. And first, we have a council request status report. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask Public Works Director to address any updates with regard to tree replacement plan and the guardrails. I don't think there's been much change since your late July meeting. We did look at and are exploring a new granting opportunity for the accessible parking spaces at the senior center. We have learned through some of the research that Finance Director Alba has done that one of the grants that we're in the process of applying for related to COVID-19 may also cover that kind of expense. So even though the AARP grant cycle for this year was essentially held up and deferred, we may be able to identify an alternative funding source. We're still researching that to see if it's going to be an eligible expense, but we'll be keeping council updated on that. Director Fisher, is there anything you can update on with the other public works related items?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the tree replacement plan. I did meet with Janice, my admin assistant, and she's reviewing the document that me and Mr. Casey put together. Basically, a plan for the trees along the pathway on Yakima Valley Highway. So she's taking a look at that. We've got 2 nurseries we're calling to see if they've got enough trees to fulfill that order. So we will update council more on that as we learn more. No update on the guardrails on Riverside. I think the last update we did is we have to wait to get with SCID to look at potential guardrail along Grandview Avenue, which is on the east end of Grandview Avenue as it wraps around the hill. And then the downtown planters, of course, staff is still continuing to clean those as we would. Of course, all the lights and all those things have been repaired, and I reported on that earlier this year. So, not sure what else we need to report really with the planters themselves. So I guess I'll ask council to maybe weigh in on that to see if we can take that off or if that needs to continue to stay on there.
Shane, as far as the planters, I walked by a couple of them this afternoon, and there's quite a few weeds. I know we have had some hot days, and obviously that promotes growth in some of the planters. But a few of those have quite a few grass, specifically the one in front of next to the bar, there's Amigos, and also the empty parking lot across the street seems to be growing quite a bit of grass. So I'm not sure if we have somebody take a look at those and maybe get those cleaned up a little bit.
Yeah, they should be cleaning them out weekly. So let me. It sounds like I need to get after somebody. So yeah, I will definitely talk with Mitch about that in the morning.
And as far as the planters, council members, do you guys want to keep this on, or is there whose item was it? Stremler, Deputy Mayor Stremler, do you want to keep this on, or do you want to remove it?
We can drop it.
Good. Okay. See, it sounds like we can get rid of this council request item.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
thank you. And for council's awareness, the fire chief included an update on the resident volunteer program in his monthly report, which we just sent out to council today by email. If there's any questions on it, we'll be happy to address those, but I know it went out this afternoon, so I don't know that you've all had a chance to see it yet. And then if I remember correctly, Councilor Restucci at the last meeting indicated that there might be an update on the small cell 5G discussion, and I don't remember the details, but if there's new information, defer to your knowledge on that one.
I do have a small report, Mr. Mayor, probably about 5 minutes. I can do it whenever council wants.
But if it's related to 5G, we'll take it now.
Thank you, sir. So on June 10th, 2020, the FCC issued a new ruling affecting local review of modification proposals to existing wireless infrastructure. Intended to help expedite the deployment of 5G technology, the ruling addresses modifying existing wireless communication facilities, existing and new concealments, and it adds clarifications to the on-shot clock, tolling, and definition of equipment cabinet. The full declaratory ruling was released on June 10th, and I've made a copy of the link available to council. I'll send this email to council immediately upon my report. The new ruling addresses the 60-day shot clock and clarifies what constitutes a substantial change and cleans up a few ambiguities. The term substantial change in eligible facilities requests were previously interpreted in the FCC's 2014 infrastructure order. To local governments without established procedures for these type of applications, imagine the same thing as a site review or for a wireless facility or something of that nature. We don't actually have policies in place right now for this, so that's going to be one of my recommendations to council. But some cities and local government associations have already sued the FCC on this new ruling. The League of Oregon Cities, the League of California Cities, and the California City governments of Glendora, Rancho Palos Verdes, and Torrance have petitioned the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to review the FCC's 5G upgrade order, which is declaratory. The cities are arguing that the FCC's clarification of the rules is actually a wholesale rules change, and it should have been handled through the proper procedures, which is a notice of proposed rulemaking, instead of a declaratory ruling like they did. Also, the cities believe the FCC failed to prove that the previous rules concerning cell site zoning needed to be changed at all. And lastly, the rule says that local governments may not delay triggering the shot clock by declaring the multiple steps, such as separate meetings with multiple groups, historic preservation board, city staff, resident groups, so forth and so on. And that all those are considered a single step, nor can they delay the request additional documentation beyond the 2014 FCC wireless infrastructure report. So basically the cities are saying the FCC changed the rules midstream. Now they're changing the rules again, and we can't even comply with the first set of rules. So I'm not sure exactly where this where this will lead us. But my recommendation to council will be that we direct the Planning Commission, city managers to establish and review procedures for wireless applications that will meet the requirements of 6409A of the Spectrum Act of 2012. Both the MRSC and the AWC will be great resources to call upon. I'll stand for any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Council members, questions on Councilor Restucci's report? Okay, councilors, Restucci wanted to send this over to the Planning Commission to get some work done. Is there any objection of getting this over to the Planning Commission to get some information compiled regarding 5G? Okay, here no objection. Mr. City Manager, could we make that happen, please?
Absolutely. Well, point of clarification, Councilor Restucci, if you can copy me on the email that goes to council, I'll make sure that our planning supervisor, Mr. Shuttleworth, gets that information, and we can use that as the point of departure for working on the necessary procedures with the Planning Commission.
No problem, sir. I will definitely provide that. I also think it's important that as we start looking at this, we need to look at the viability of 5G technologies being deployed in the Yakima Valley. Specifically given that 5G technologies will not fix rural broadband issues, and deployment will have its own set of issues. For those that don't know, 5G technology will work great in dense populated urban areas, but for rural areas, 5G is not going to be our answer to fixing the broadband issues. So with that, I say that we send this to Planning Commission with the idea that they look at this as a whole.
Okay, sounds good.
Mr. Mayor, just for council's awareness, wanted to let council know that the Yakima Valley Council of Governments also recently sent out a brief questionnaire just asking if we're aware of any efforts underway currently with our local school district related to broadband expansion, in particular in concerns with having to move so significantly into remote learning in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm aware of from conversations with School Superintendent McKay that while our school district has had, on the whole, very good success with assisting their students in transitioning to online learning, remote learning, they have found some issues with broadband access in the school district, especially outside the urban area, outside the city. As Councilor Restucci just noted, it's an issue for them. And so I'll try to weave some of that information into the work that the Planning Commission is doing, and also keep in the loop on what the result of YVCOG's survey turns out to be.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And just to make sure, if there's no doubt on what the Planning Commission is being asked to do, because in the past, we were notified that sometimes we sent over items to the Planning Commission. They were not 100% clear what their purpose was. So if there's any confusion, I guess at this point, I'm sure Councilmember Restucci can clarify as far as what we're looking for, and then that way it comes back to council.
Absolutely.
And I'm more than happy to work with the city manager's office and report back to council as well, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any additional items on the council request status, Mr. City Manager?
I don't believe so. No, no, sir.
Okay, council members, is there any additional items you would like to see on the council request status report? Okay, hearing no other items, move on to our next agenda item, which is going to be other reports, announcements, and or questions by council. We'll start with Councilor Restucci. Is there any additional items you'd like to report or questions?
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hicks?
No questions.
Councilor Henry?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, Councilor Farmer?
No.
Councilor Stremler?
No.
Councilor Broersma?
Yes, sir. I have two questions I just want to clarify. I've had some people asking me. When we as council made the decision not to open our pool earlier this year, it was stated that we were going to take advantage of the warm weather and the pool being closed to do some updating and upgrading of our pool facilities. Is that, or has that happened?
Short answer, yes, it is underway. That's also one of the projects we've added onto the monthly report that was just sent out this afternoon. In brief, right now, most of the work is being done on the interior, primarily in the shower and restroom and locker room portion of the facility. It's been stripped down, cleaned. It is in the process of being repainted, and new fixtures for replacement of certain damaged pieces are on order. They will also be moving forward with repainting and resurfacing the pool itself, and we have some. Then eventually we'll move to the exterior, and so there'll be a little more visible activity when the outside gets repainted. But quite a bit of work already underway. We've been fortunate on the expenditures because we've been able to capture some things very inexpensively. We were fortunate that the Grandview High School, which the city of Grandview is getting ready to build a new high school. Their former high school will not be used, and they were surplusing the gym lockers from that facility. And so we were able to acquire those through the surplus transfer rather than having to buy new lockers for the swim. I don't know if I'm not sure if they call it the lock. It didn't have lockers in it, so I don't know if they actually called it the locker room. I've heard it referred to as the bathhouse or something like that. But anyway, we are moving forward on that, and very excited to be able to start showing that off with next year's swim season.
Thank you, sir. My second question is, and I may have missed this somewhere, but are we doing any chip sealing of our streets this summer?
I'll ask Director Fisher to speak to that. I know we cut back on that quite a bit, but he may. I'll ask him to.
Yeah, we sorry about that. Yeah, we cut back on the budget last year. Then going into this year, we were going to try to do a few streets, and then COVID happened. And since that's a general fund, subsidized department, we decided to not do chip seal this year, just in case, revenues and stuff came in, lower than expected, to make sure that we didn't overspend those budgets. So So your answer is, to your question is no, we are not going to chip seal this year.
Thank you, guys. That's what I needed to know.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I
Mr.
don't
Mayor?
have any.
Mr.
Yes,
Mayor,
sir.
sorry, I have one alibi, sir. I apologize. I looked on the agenda. I didn't see any appointments for boards and commissions for you. And so I wanted to make council aware that Bud Rogers' appointment to the Planning Commission had expired on May 30th. And I would would support a reappointment, Mr. Mayor, if that was your intention. And for council's knowledge, I appointed Bud Rogers to the Planning Commission on May 3rd, 2017 to fill an unexpired term. He was subsequently confirmed by council on May 8th, and his commission did expire on May 30th. So I didn't know if you had others, Mr. Mayor, but I would support that.
Thank you, Councilor Stucci. I was not aware. Ms. City Clerk, could you look into that? And if he has expired, get some paperwork ready for us. So I don't believe we have any other applicants. And it sounds like he is qualified since council already confirmed him. So we just have our city clerk get that information, all the paperwork ready for us. We could definitely look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We'll look in, we'll take care of that.
Okay. Up next, we have our upcoming council meetings. Mr. City Manager.
All right. Oh, there it goes on the screen. Coming up next on Saturday, August 22nd will be the budget workshop. And during the department head reports, Finance Director Elizabeth Alba will talk a little bit further about the agenda item there. On August 24th is our next regular meeting. We anticipate being able to either take action or have a discussion related to the outcome from the Transportation Benefit District Proposition 1 election results. I'll have a report on that in my city manager's report on the election, but we are working with the city attorney on what next formal action that council needs to take. May not happen in August, it may happen in September, but we have time if necessary. The tax increase would take effect on January 1st of 2021 per Department of Revenue laws. So we've got time on that. We have further discussion and possible action for second reading on I think we'll update that. That's going to be public camping ordinance, as was discussed tonight. And then we're anticipating action from the Department of Ecology's airport cleanup grant. This has been under review and in process at Ecology for a few weeks. And so we've just deferred it out pending their final approval of that. At council's request, then coming up on Tuesday, September 8th, this is following the Labor Day holiday, so it's a little different day of the week than usual. Council had asked for the Planning Commission and planning staff to take a look at the possibility of impact fees, development impact fees. We are assigned that to the planning supervisor, Mike Shuttleworth, to start by providing council with an overview of the statutory framework and the structure that cities have to follow when enacting impact fees and some of the requirements they have to comply with. Just to kind of start that ball rolling. Jackie, let's go ahead and scroll down to future items. Some of these are deferred. These were presentations or recognitions that we had initially placed on council's agenda back before the COVID-19 pandemic. The Coach Paulus, who had retired as the wrestling coach, and then an iWatch Community Crime Program presentation. Those are just on hold until such time as council can meet again. We will be starting bargaining on our two outstanding bargaining agreements that both come due this year, one in Public Works and one for the clerical bargaining units. We are starting to work on an update to the yard sale ordinance. This is primarily around updating some of the language, and also looking at there's a permit required, but there's never been a fee or administrative mechanism set up for that. And so we're researching some possible approaches for how that could work. We will soon be having discussion with the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee related to the use of the 2021 lodging tax funds. So we'll see that come forward. We're also working with the port on the airport hangar project, and we'll have potentially some agreements that need to come before council for consideration in order to keep moving that forward. And then finally, we've got 2 more items coming up out of planning. Under the comprehensive plan, which we need to update, was last enacted in 2007. One of the initial elements that is required for planning under the Growth Management Act is that you establish a public participation plan for how you're going to conduct the development and public process for the comprehensive plan. And so we'll be bringing that first to the Planning Commission for discussion, actually tomorrow night at their next meeting, and then back to council for review as well. And Mr. Shuttleworth also is taking a look at our sign ordinance. When that was enacted, it included a provision that fees could only be set by council. Based on what our review of the municipal code, there are currently no fees as adopted by council. As a result, in looking into this, I found that the city has never actually imposed a fee for a sign for signage, even though that authority was intended to be granted in that sign ordinance. So trying to look at that and make sure we are bringing that to council for consideration. So those are some of the things we're hoping to be able to bring forward to you, in addition to budget and everything else, before the end of the year, or at least into midwinter.
Okay, thank you for that. Council members, any questions on the upcoming council meetings?
This is Councilor Farmer, and I do have just question / comment.
Go right ahead, sir.
Our upcoming budget meeting. Are we going to be able to do that not online? Maybe we could meet in the park, outside, in front of City Hall, in front of the community center. I would really like to be able to meet together in a group to do that. I know churches can meet outside now. Is there any reason why we cannot, if we cannot maybe petition the county and get an exemption to where we can meet outside?
The information that we have from the governor's office is that no public body is to meet or to have an in-person component to their meeting until you have moved into at least phase 2. And even after phase 2, only no more than 5 participants can be part of an in-person component. So it wouldn't satisfy that. Outdoor meetings and the spacing, it's the research that the Clerks Association and that we've had from the governor's office is that they are not doing. Now, what we are trying to work on to make sure that everyone has an ability to have visual communication is based on what we saw happen. I think it was in Franklin County. They were able to have a separate meeting space, separate room for each of the county commissioners. They each go to a different room, so they are not in person, but they are all in different rooms where they have the technology set up to enable them to participate more fully with a screen and camera. We've been exploring the possibility of providing a similar setup by utilizing some of the facilities of the city, the community center, the city hall, the fire station, where we have training or other meeting spaces, other offices that have cameras and have the monitors, so that, you know, on the day of the budget workshop, somebody could be buddied up, for example, with the fire chief in his office, and then council member in a separate space at the fire station where we've got this set up. So we are trying to work within the constraints of what we're legally authorized to do. But that's what I know. That's what Franklin County Commission ran into when they attempted to have one of their members basically attend a meeting physically present with another staffer or another commissioner, and they were advised that was not permitted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Any additional questions on our upcoming council meetings? Okay, we'll move on to our next item, which is going to be items from city manager and department heads.
All right, thank you. I'll report on 3 items tonight, an update on COVID-19, as well as an update, as I mentioned, on the ballot proposition, and then finally, some of the progress we've had with communications related to homeless services. For COVID-19, as of this evening, Yakima County is reporting 10,941 cases and 205 deaths from COVID-19. Currently, we have 22 residents in the hospital. But what is really remarkable about that number, and I know nearly 11,000 cases sounds very daunting. We've been at about 10,000, or we've been north of about 10,000 for quite some time now, and we have actually averaged only 49 new cases a day over the last 14 days. This is down by, compared to where we were up averaging over 140 cases just a few weeks ago. About 80% of our cases are now considered recovered, meaning that it has been at least 28 days since they received a positive COVID diagnosis and are not currently in the hospital or deceased. And that's also increased. That percentage of our community that has recovered from COVID has begun increasing because it's catching up with the decrease in new cases each day. Statewide, we have had just over 63,000 cases and nearly 1,700 deaths. There have been issues in the rest of the state with increasing activities that have contributed to a rise in new cases in counties that had moved to phase 2 or phase 3. So the state has paused any further reopening at this time. The governor and the legislature have jointly approved several state orders related to COVID-19 and extended them to at least the start of September. Kind of lifting up to higher level nationally at this time, there are approximately 5.2 million confirmed cases and just over 165,000 deaths. Globally, that ranks the United States first in total number of cases, 9th in cases per capita, 10th in deaths per capita, and 19th in testing per capita. The University of Washington is now projecting that we will see approximately 300,000 deaths nationwide by the end of November. State officials recently issued general guidance for schools and left it primarily to local health districts and school boards to make those final decisions. Last week, the Yakima Health District urged all local schools to begin fall classes remotely. And in a special meeting last Friday night, Sunnyside School Board voted to start the fall term remotely here. And so we're expecting further details on the logistics around that. And I've been monitoring both their Facebook page and been in touch with Superintendent McKay about how they're going to manage that, but still some details to be worked out, but they've been working on planning for that option for quite some time. In closing, health officials continue to say it's going to take several months before we really see COVID-19 brought under control. It's going to be months before a vaccine is available. And so until then, they urge the community here to keep up the great work that has begun bringing our numbers down and is letting us resume some business and other activities. Keep wearing a face mask at work or in public when you can't be more than 6 feet apart, or even, and now they're saying on the inside, even if, at all times when you're inside. unless you're in a isolated office. Wash your hands frequently, don't have social gatherings with anyone who doesn't live with you, and please stay home except for essential travel. Moving now to the Transportation Benefit District. I'm pleased to report that Sunnyside's Proposition 1 is currently leading by 727 to 685 votes for a total of 1,412 votes cast in this election. This measure would authorize the council to impose up to 2/10 of 1% sales and use tax within the city limits for 10 years to fund transportation improvements. County election officials have observed that countywide we had an exceptional voter turnout this year, surpassing 43%. In fact, Sunnyside residents have turned out in this primary at a rate almost 30% higher than voted in last year's council elections, where we had about 1,080 votes. These ballot results are very encouraging. They're not final, but they are encouraging, especially considering how much our lives and livelihoods have changed due to the COVID-19 pandemic since council placed this measure on the ballot back in February. This level of support, especially given the constraints on, there was no public campaigning around this or anything, primarily may reflect the impact of the last 3 or more years of council deliberations and public meetings and hearings to help inform the public about our transportation needs, the options we have for funding those projects, and the specific mechanism of Transportation Benefit District. At this point, the county estimates there are only about 300 ballots left to count county-wide, and they will certify final election results on August 18th. And then my final report related to homelessness is that staff and I, this includes police, public works, planning and code enforcement, are continuing to address the concerns and identify resources for homeless residents. Police and code enforcement have confirmed that the freeway encampment that was reported last week is on land owned by the state's Department of Transportation, which has jurisdiction over that site. Staff have made contact with the State Patrol and with DOT, who are considering their next steps. They may issue a 24-hour notice to remove the encampment, but they haven't reached that decision yet, and when they do, they'll keep us posted on that process. Following up on Councilor Hicks' question last week, we have confirmed that Cornerstone Church is no longer hosting a shelter. At this time, Camp Hope in Yakima is currently the nearest active legal encampment that we're aware of. Noah's Ark shelter in Wapato just shut down temporarily due to security concerns, and most of its residents have simply relocated to public spaces near the shelter. The Yakima Nation's shelter is closed, although in January, the city of Toppenish was able to arrange with the Farm Workers Clinic and Camp Hope's operator to open a temporary cold weather shelter that served about 100 residents through March only, but it's closed now. I have learned that Rod's House, which primarily serves youth, Rod's House in Yakima is seeking to create a small youth residential shelter here in Sunnyside. And the county is currently applying for funds to assist Rod's House with their operations. So we'll keep posted on that, and I'll be reaching out to them. On Thursday, in fact, I'm meeting with Lee Murdoch of the Yakima County Homeless Network. It was my contact with her a couple of weeks ago that resulted in Neighborhood Health Services reaching out to the residents in our downtown parking lot. And although privacy laws bar them from providing us with specific updates, we do understand they're trying to work with them on housing solutions and car repairs. And then Mayor mentioned in his remarks, I did connect with Grandview Councilmember Joan Suter today. She reached out to meet with me. She works on or serves on YVCOG task group on homelessness, and she's eager to meet and share further background information on regional services and response strategies, and noted that Grandview has been working through a lot of the same questions and issues that we are. They're getting the same advice from their legal counsel as we have, and so be eager to learn more about what her perspective is on this matter. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the department heads. We already talked a little bit about budget. I'll invite Finance Director Alba to share anything further on the budget workshop or any other items that she has to kick it off.
Thank you, City Manager Casey. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
I have begun planning the budget retreat, and I will confirm that we are slated to go for August 22nd, starting at 9 a.m. It will be a Zoom meeting. You will all receive invitations. We plan on having hard copy printed packets ready for everyone, and we'll be delivering or have you pick them up on Thursday so that you'll have Friday to look at them. I'm also working on a lunch, so you'll get to pick up your lunch so that we'll still have our traditional meeting feeling. Even though we won't be meeting together, we can still have our lunch together. There will be, like Martin said, some different people that have a variety of issues when it comes to these Zoom meetings. So we're hoping to partner up with the council members that want to meet with staff and sit with us, and we'll make sure that you're able to get online, you're able to view and see and interact with the rest of the council in the most personal way we can. And so we've got several locations that we've talked about. Community centers currently closed. We can use the equipment there. And basically me in one room and someone in another room. And but making sure that the equipment's there and that there's someone to assist if there's issues. And then there would be the fire department and then the conference room at City Hall. And really other than that, we've just the last week been gathering information, getting all of the packet materials updated from last year. It'll be about the same format, so you should recognize the materials. You know, new information though, of lots of uncertainties for next year. So we'll be very careful in what we do with our budgeting so that we make sure it's in balance and that we can get us where we need to be for 2021. And then on another note, my personal information, I thought I would share. My daughter and future son-in-law both were tested, and we're still waiting for the COVID results. They called this morning, they were tested last Monday, and they called this morning and they still haven't gotten them. So it's just really hard when you have to telework and you're kind of put into a situation where you don't know if your household has it or not, and yet you want to protect all the people at work and not take it to work. So I've been teleworking last week and will be until the results come back in. And then otherwise, the audit does start on Monday. So auditors have been asking for a laundry list of items that I've been providing electronically. They will be reaching out. We do have our entrance conference scheduled, so that will be held virtually. And otherwise, just steady as we go, lots of work to do. Thank you.
Sorry about that, I was muted. Let's try, Chief Anderson, do you want to go next?
Good evening. Yes, I have nothing new tonight other than what was I logged on. I'm just flying back in from Maryland, but I thought I'd log in case you guys had questions if my monthly report didn't go out regarding the resident program. But it's all contained in there, and so if nobody has any questions, I don't have anything else new.
Just for situational awareness, I'm not sure if council also received, I did get an alert Yakima fire danger alert for tomorrow afternoon in the valley because of high temperatures, dry conditions, winds. That just came through a little bit ago.
Red flag warning?
Yes, thank you. That's the term. Director Fisher, anything further?
Yeah, just a quick update on the giant tree branch that fell at Central Park last Thursday. Friday, of course, Thursday night we had city crews showed up. We moved the branch off of Park Drive, back up into the park property, and out of the way. Friday we came in. I got a hold of a couple tree services to come in and do an assessment. One said they would actually come in on a Saturday, this past Saturday, to take a look at it. In the meantime, on Friday, we did shut down a portion of Park Drive just to make sure cars weren't driving through that area, just in case another branch decided to come down. So came in on this morning, got a hold of the tree service. Gentleman had come out and took a look at the tree. He does believe it needs to come down. The branch did have some dry rot inside of it. So staff currently is seeking bids from the tree services we have in the valley to come and take that tree down. We did also notify the insurance company, of the incident. Of course, nobody was hurt. There's no pending claims or anything, but just it's good to keep them in the loop on what's going on. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And Chief Escalera.
Yeah, just basically a clarification. I just wanted to let everybody know that the Cornerstone Church never did have a shelter for the homeless. What they did is they just participated in feeding the homeless over the holiday weekends. That quite a few had shown up for food, and they also went out to locations to drop food off for them. So it was, but it was never a situation where they were actually housing or any situations like that. So I just want to clarify that.
Thank you. And Clerk Renteria?
Yes, I would like to share some census information. The census self-response date has been moved up a month to September 30th. That's the last day to complete the census. As of August 9th, only 53.1% of Sunnyside residents have completed the census. Census staff will be visiting neighborhoods wearing face masks and following guidelines to assist those who have not completed the census. And we are also, the lodging tax requests for proposals are due next week, the 19th, to me. And then LTAC will be meeting on August 26th to review those applications. And then following that, any recommendations that they make will be forwarded to you at your next council meeting, which is September 14th.
Thank you. And I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager, for the report and department heads. And at this point, unless there's anything further, we'll go ahead and call this meeting adjourned at 7:34 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you. Have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.
Not all.